Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, one and all. It's great to see you all here today gathered. I'm Dr. Allen Partridge. I'm a senior technology evangelist here at Adobe, and today I want to share with you getting started with Adobe Captivate Prime. During today's session, I will walk you through an overview of Adobe Captivate Prime, which is the all-new learning management system from Adobe. I will also go a little bit deeper today. I'll actually show you some of the details of how to set up your Prime account, work with your first trial, add some users, actually get started under the hood and start working with Prime. So we've got a lot to cover. It should be loads of fun. If after today's session you have any questions, I'd encourage you to feel free to email me. My email is going into the chat pod right now. Fairly small session today, just about 20 of us here in the room. So feel free to type in the chat pod as we go, and we'll leave it open for conversation. By all means, feel free to interject and ask questions at whatever point. I'm happy to kind of sway and move as your needs arise. So let's get started then. So Adobe Captivate Prime is first and foremost a cloud-based, learner-first learning management system. We went around the world for a couple of years before actually putting Captivate Prime together, and we spoke to people all over the planet about their learning management systems. We wanted to focus on a learning management system that was right for business, that would work well in organizations and business structures, and that would help align with the kind of strategic goals and plans that people have for their organizations. We realized right away that there would be several advantages to offering a cloud-based solution, not the least of which would be that we could provide a solution that would give people the power that they needed in terms of handling video and scalability, being able to handle any number of people very quickly. But also it would solve what we found was pretty much the most significant problem that learning directors and training managers and HR directors were telling us that they had with their learning management systems. And that was that in the world of ever escalating demands on IT, the learning management system traditionally had become sort of an IT requirement. They needed to always go through IT in order to accomplish tasks. So if there were small updates to their LMS, or if they needed to make some change, if something went wrong, it always had to pass through their IT department. And that left them feeling very powerless when it came to being able to handle the day-to-day activities of working with a learning management system. So we knew that making it cloud-based would give us a tremendous power to put the power back into the hands of the learning directors, the HR folks, and so on. We also wanted to provide a solution that would allow for deep analytics and reporting, that would give you a way to get meaningful information and get information that could be used in a business space, as opposed to information that's just sort of sitting back on a server somewhere and not really finding a home. Of course, Adobe Captivate Prime is mobile first, and by that I mean that it's designed from the gate to be friendly on your mobile devices, whether they're iOS devices or Android-based devices. And we also included gamification to help with learner engagement and to make a more enticing space in order to solve another big problem that people were telling us they often faced. And this was that they would often find that even though they had whole libraries of course content to assist in training different concepts for people in different roles in their organization, that content was often going unused. It was simply being ignored. And so we wanted to find ways to help people encourage a kind of culture of learning inside their organization. And so the gamification contributes to that culture of learning, as does a new feature inside of Adobe Captivate Prime, which has to do with the way that we actually provide the learning content to the learner. It's a much more packaged, kind of stimulating learning experience. If you've worked with traditional learning management systems, you'll probably realize that oftentimes it seems sort of like there are a bunch of links that just get kind of tossed randomly out onto a page. And learners can feel immediately confused. They're not sure how all of those things fit together. For most of us in training, learning doesn't just mean the LMS training. It often means face-to-face courses. It means courses that come through video. It means courses that may come through other kinds of formats. Maybe you've got Word docs or PDFs. As you've developed your training materials, they may come in a huge variety of different formats. And so we wanted to provide a solution that would allow you to have a stimulating overall learning experience and that um, to put that experience into a single unified fluidic player that would allow everyone to experience those things in a very contiguous manner. In other words, that they would feel like this is all one course. I know where everything is, even if I have a face-to-face training or a virtual training session. All of those things are here in my fluidic player, so that I know all of the things I need to do in order to complete this course. I see a question there from Peter. He asks about the gamification. I'm going to talk about that in some detail, Peter. And absolutely, I think that for some managers, gamification can raise a kind of a red flag. For others, it's become kind of a requirement. So depending on the competitiveness of the group, you may find that there are differing desirability levels related to gamification. And as we walk through Prime, I'll show you how you can actually enable or disable gamification, either for your organization as a whole or for individual learners. You can actually opt people in and out. So you have tremendous control over exactly who participates in the gamification. I also happen to know that the engineering team is currently implementing a solution for gamification to use our grouping system, so that it'll be possible in the next major feature set release. It'll be possible for you to actually restrict that to given groups. So for example, you want gamification for the sales team, but not for the HR team. You can set it up very easily just by using those groups. That's not there today. That's not something that's included today, but it is something that is currently being tested on the back end and is expected to roll out in just a few months here. All right, so that fluidic player is a big part of that overall experience. And one of the things to understand about the fluidic player is that it's able to play a variety of different content. And it can do that because everything in the fluidic player is actually HTML5. Now, you don't have to turn it into HTML5. Adobe does it for you. So the way that works is if you have a Word document or a PowerPoint file or a PDF document, you simply upload those directly into Captivate Prime. When you do that, it will then automatically convert them into HTML5 for you. That means that they'll play back easily in the fluidic player. They'll play back easily on your mobile devices as well as on your desktop or laptop devices, making it a seamless experience for the learner. It also provides us the ability to track in detail the things that are happening in those formats. So for example, you want to know that they read all 22 pages of a Word document. That's no problem because Adobe Captivate Prime reports all of that information, and you can even use it to set parameters like whether they've really completed the information or not. Want to make sure they get to the last slide in the slide deck? No problem, because all of that's being handled. All right. Now, in addition to those common document formats, we also support video formats. So the video formats include any major video format, file format. So whether it's a QuickTime movie or an MP4 or any of the major video formats, you simply upload the video directly into Prime. And what that means from a kind of pragmatic viewpoint is that you do not need any kind of video streaming service. So let me repeat that. You do not need any video streaming service because in addition to acting as an LMS, Prime also acts as your video streaming service. It automatically takes the video that you upload, rips it out into a couple of dozen copies, and then takes those copies and distributes the copy that the person needs for the bandwidth limitations they have, for the size of screen that they have. It automatically selects the best one and automatically streams it down using state-of-the-art, state-of-the-industry streaming technology. So they will get a beautiful, perfect stream regardless of what device they're on. That's another advantage of the cloud. People often tell me, and I encourage you to test Captivate Prime. It is, of course, available for free for a 30-day test. One of the things that people often tell me is they're shocked at how quickly their files and materials upload into Adobe Captivate Prime. If you've got an LMS currently, you may find that that's one of your kind of log jams, your sticking points, is that it takes forever to upload content into your LMS and then forever for it to convert. In Captivate Prime's case, you'll find that both of those processes are very, very rapid. All right. In addition to the Fluidic Player being able to handle those media formats, the video, the PDFs, the PowerPoints, the Word docs, it also has the ability to handle any SCORM or AICC content. So that means any e-learning content that's been formatted for SCORM or AICC, obviously that includes Adobe Captivate and Adobe Presenter. It also includes the new Adobe Presenter Video Express. And in all of those cases, the most recent version of the Adobe eLearning tools, you can simply click one button to automatically publish directly into Captivate Prime. In the case that you're using legacy content or you have other content that you've developed with another eLearning authoring tool, so long as that tool exports in SCORM or AICC format, you can upload that content directly into Prime as well. So it's great for bringing across your legacy content because it's going to understand and include the playback of any of that SCORM or AICC content. And the mobile learning is also a huge boon. So the mobile learning actually makes it possible for you to publish just the one time, and it's going to play back on the mobile devices. But it'll also work offline. So whether they're working the iOS device or the Android device, it's automatically going to play back the content on those devices. It uses a proprietary player. It uses a player that you download from the Play Store, whether it is the Android Play Store or the iOS Play Store, and that player is free. And the reason it uses that player to play back the content is so that it can download the content, so that it can be available at any point to that learner, whether they're online or off, and so that it can do what we call offline reporting, which essentially means if you've gone far away from a location that has a network and you finish your course materials, obviously you still want the results of that course progress to be reported back to your learning management system. Even if there's no network available at that time, as soon as that device, that iPad or that Android tablet gets back into a network range, it'll automatically go back online and report back the results to the server. So it's a great way to be able to have those results reported immediately. Now, Prime is first and foremost easy, easy, easy. It's incredibly simple to use. It's incredibly simple to set up and manage. And I'll show you some of what that setup and management looks like today. It uses a very flat, intuitive user interface. The things that you're most likely to do are popped right out in front of your nose, front and center, so they're easy to find. It uses a format for that layout that is universal. So no matter where you are administratively, you're going to have the same basic experience of using Prime. It does have some inbuilt learning content functionality, although it's not a learning content management system. So what I mean by that is obviously it hosts the video content, it hosts all of the other content that we've talked about, and that's what we think about primarily when we think LCMS. But it does not get into all that muddy territory of, reversion and going back and forth between file versions and so on. It does allow you to actually update or upload a new version of a course and then have that course or that course module replace inside of course content. So it's up to you. It gives you that control, but it's simple and a simplified kind of learning content functionality. Of course, we include comprehensive tracking, and we use a smart enroller. And the Smart Enroller is a way that you can leverage your HR information system database. So whether you're using Microsoft Active Directories or Oracle or Saba or any of the HR directory services that are out there, it will allow you to import your HR information systems directory. And that simplifies that process. Of course, you can also use a single sign-on, and you're probably not familiar with that. It's what your IT department would typically manage. So a single sign-on is the thing that makes it possible for you to log in just one time using any using a single login, and that single login across all of your accounts greatly simplifies the complexity of passwords and logins and all of that kind of thing. So Prime uses a SAML 2.0 standard, which is the universal standard for a single sign-on, and enables you, of course, to set up that single sign-on solution for your organization. The Smart Enroller is pretty awesome. It allows you to search through multiple parameters to automatically assign people to courses, but also to assign people to roles, to assign people to programs, and you can also use it to assign people to certificates and to really anything inside of the system. It expedites the process of aligning people with the skills that you hope that they'll learn. And that naturally transitions into a better understanding of then how does Prime help you improve the return on investment for the organization? How does it help the learning developer, the learning director, prove the worth of the learning program? And how does it actually improve the worth of the learning program? Because those are really important parts of this. So when we looked at this problem, we said, you know what? It's pretty clear that what happens in most organizations is that at the board level, at the CEO, CTO, CIO level, they make decisions about how they're going to improve as an organization over the next quarter, over the next year, over the next 5 years. And they put that together in a kind of a strategic plan. And that strategic plan will include organizational goals. They may include short-term goals, they may include long-term goals, but it's very important that everyone in the organization work toward those goals. And so as training organizations, if we can align to those goals, it greatly increases the likelihood that those at the CEO level will see the value that we're adding to the organization. The way that we set that up is you look at something like an organizational goal that comes down the pipe, which says, hey, we want to improve our enterprise sales strategies over the next year. Okay, well, that's kind of a broad goal for improving sales strategies. Maybe if it's a good goal, it's going to have some concrete thing, like we want to improve our sales goal by X margin or in some way that makes sense to people. So that can be reduced by folks in HR and folks in training down to the competencies and skills that sales personnel will have to attain in order to improve those expectations. So the way that that can be done is maybe you discover that there's a kind of a gap or a shortage in contract negotiation, for example, or in identifying customers. And as you identify those things that are going to be the most significant gaps in terms of the training, those are the elements that you're going to want to identify as skills and then assign to the people who are expected to learn those skills. And by being able to assign those skills and then discover how well people are doing on those skills, not just in terms of passing some test, but also in terms of the feedback that you're getting from their managers about to what extent the training has improved their ability to conquer that skill. That is how Prime actually maximizes the return on investment and helps you to report and prove that you've done a bang-up job in those areas. And so we say that Prime is skill-based and skill-centered. And what we mean is that you have the ability to set up skills and align to those skills based on the plan of the organization. And then you have the ability to report back how effectively those skills have been trained and met. And not just in a kind of abstract or instructional kind of way, not just because they passed tests, but also in a very concrete way. 5 weeks after they have taken a course, the manager of a given trainee is given the is given a Likert question that asks them to report back to what extent did this trainee actually demonstrate on the job their improvement in contract negotiation skills over the past 4 to 6 weeks. So you can see that, depending on what the skill is, you have a very powerful tool to be able to get not just the obvious forms of assessment, but a really deep form of assessment along those lines. So we'll take a look at how that is implemented in Prime here in just a second. I want to give you also a sense of how Prime is organized in a global sense. So Prime is set up in such a way that you have learning modules. These are things like your Word documents and your videos and your e-learning courses and so on. But you have those learning modules and you combine them together with virtual conferencing sessions, with face-to-face sessions, with activities and so on. You combine all of that together into a course. You can also combine courses together into whole curricula or learning programs. Now, Prime also supports a thing called a learning plan. A learning plan is a way to automate the process of assigning courses and learning programs. You can actually set up an automation chain for whenever a person is promoted or a person onboards, a person changes their location, and so on. You can automate the assignment of programs of learning or courses of learning to those individuals, basically creating kind of an onboarding solution that's fully automated. We do that by syncing to the directory of personnel that you have in your system. All right. Then we also have the ability to establish a learning culture through the gamification. Now, the gamification is incredibly powerful. It uses a system of incentives that are geared around what it is that the learner has done inside of your system. So the incentives come for doing things like taking courses that align to the skills they've been assigned, taking a certain number of courses in a certain time frame, taking a variety of different kinds of courses. So whether it's that they're multi-talented, whether they're upskilling, whether they're working quickly and so on, all of these things can be assigned points in the leaderboard. The gamification allows you to, as I mentioned before, enable or disable the leaderboard on an individual level or globally across the entire organization. You also have the ability to see how you earn the points and to see how you rank compared to other people in your organization. You can even type in the names of friends and then see them pop up on the leader line in order to determine how you're doing compared to them. Prime also supports a solution called a Course Effectiveness Index. Now, the Course Effectiveness Index gives you a way to be able to measure the effectiveness of that course, obviously, but from several different perspectives, whether it's from a learner perspective, trying to understand, should I take this course? Is it good? From an author's perspective, should I redesign this course? Is it working or is it not working? And from an administrator's perspective, should I invest money in this course? Is there a need for additional training around this piece of content? The way we do that is by soliciting 3 levels of feedback. The first level of feedback is what we would typically call smile sheets. It just asks the learner the questions in a Likert base, to what extent did you get what you were looking for out of this course and so on. And you can control whether to use those or not use those, and you can control everything about the language in those as well. And we'll look at that in a second. In addition to that, you also have the second level of feedback, which comes from the course interactions. And that's simply an assessment, automatic, of whether or not the assessment was effective based on how well people did on the whole. And then finally, the third method is the one we talked about just a moment ago, where the manager has the opportunity for feedback. Again, you can enable this or disable this for any of the courses or content, and you can customize the language of this Likert question that goes out to the manager. That question is really critical for folks understanding at the top level, at the board level, the effectiveness of course content or programs. It helps them understand exactly what the manager's feedback was in terms of whether this is a skill that's actually being applied on the job. And so it gives them a really concrete way to know how effective this is. Do we have any questions thus far? I'll mention while I'm here that Prime is available for $4 per month per registered learner. Obviously, the prices go down as you increase the number of learners. The discount started at about 500 learners. The minimum Prime license is for 10 learners. So if you have 10 learners or more, you're good to go. Or if you don't have 10 learners, obviously, you're going to find an endpoint at about that 10 learner point. I see a question from Robert. I work for a company that creates an LMS sold as both standalone, installed at the client side, and as a hosted solution, and accessed remotely. What is the real difference between a hosted solution and the cloud? Excellent question. So I think the cloud is sort of used liberally to describe hosted solutions and back and forth. Essentially, what either of them mean is that it's being hosted off your premises, and there is a big difference between a solution which is hosted off-prem and on-prem, but there are also big differences between hosted solutions. So we use Amazon Web Services. We use an elastic system which scales automatically and is tested into the multi-millions. We have virtually unlimited connectivity and bandwidth, virtually unlimited video streaming capacity, and so on, all using state-of-the-art, state-of-the-industry solutions. One thing to kind of look at as you look at different LMSs is while they may be cloud-based, you want to be careful to ensure, where is that actually being hosted. You want to make sure that they're being hosted with a solution that includes a distributed array so that they will work the same wherever they happen to be called up in the world, as opposed to being limited to only functioning well in certain geos. So you want to kind of double check all of those kinds of things and make sure that it's the hosting solution is really giving you what a hosted solution can. You want obviously top of the line security. You want to make sure that you've got top of the line delivery in terms of scalability and performance. And so you want to really look for those. Pravati says, good question, Parvati. I've heard extremely good reports from people in low bandwidth situations. In fact, I've spoken to someone who has tested this in the lowest bandwidth situations that they can find anywhere around the world, and they're finding incredibly high performance rates. So I would encourage you to check that out by doing a trial and see how it's performing. It should be good. And Parvati, you're pushing the edge of my technology knowledge. Jesse can probably address this better, and he's in the room today as well. The CDN, I believe, is some kind of distributed network, and I recall enough from the engineering team that the answer to this question is yes. And I think that the answer to this question is yes, and that it goes through Akamai. But Jesse, can you just confirm that for me? Or we'll see if we've got somebody in the room also who's an engineer who might be able to confirm that for me. But I think that I've got that right, but you're just right at the edge of my geekiness. Okay, so let's go ahead then and take a look at how you can actually work with Captivate Prime on a day-to-day basis. Now, as I mentioned at the start of today's session, I'm going to go a little deeper than I typically would. I'll give you a little bit more information about how actually to get started and to get set up. So there are several different ways that you can set up users inside of Adobe Captivate Prime. Those methods are external as well as internal methods. Now, typically, you would take your organization's HR information system database, and you simply get this from the HR department. and they can save the file out as what's called a comma delimited file or a CSV. And so we'll take a look now at what that kind of looks like. There are some advantages for doing the internal, and those include that gamification and hierarchies are maintainable if you use the internal registration systems. If you use the external system, you can't have gamification because there is no hierarchy. So keep in mind that the external users are available, but they don't allow you to use gamification for external learners. If you want gamification and you have groups of learners that you for some reason don't have in an HR database, you can do that using the self-registration option. All right. All right. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay. So I'm sharing my screen with you now. And what you're seeing is actually Adobe Captivate Prime. And I've got it set up kind of like Julia Childs here. I've got the administrative panel, the managers panel, the authors panel, and the learner's dashboard all set up in the same place. And you can see the learner dashboard has its own interface. And this is the same interface that you'll see whether you are a learner on a desktop or a laptop, or whether you're a learner inside of a mobile device like an iPad or an Android tablet. Now, the administrative sections, the administrator, manager, and authors roles are this sort of interface, slightly different, and it calls out the thing that you're most likely to use right away. You can see here that the panels that I called out for you separately in separate tabs of the browser, these are all panels that you can get to simply by clicking between the administrator, author, manager, learner options over there. So it's very simple to kind of navigate between each of those spaces. Now, I wanted to first show you a little bit about how to add users into your system. You can see here that it's called out from the administrators panel. You click on add users just like this. Once you've clicked on add users, you're now ready to add users into your system. When I'm ready to add the users, I'm going to click on add just like so. And I'll see the options here. I can add a single learner. I can add from a CSV file. I can add self-registration learners. These are folks who you don't have a list of, but you do have the ability to give a registration URL to a manager. So they might be people who work for another group or another body. They're not in your main HR system and so on. For them, you want to use a self-registration system. And then finally, the external enrollment is for folks who are really external to your organization and for whom you don't feel a need to have them included in the organizational hierarchy. If you need any help with this while you're actually working with your Prime trial account, you can simply click here to visit the help section and learn more about setting up a CSV. Now, that CSV file, comma delimited file, is essentially a spreadsheet file. Here you can see an example. I've got an example that uses the Jetsons. So you're probably familiar with the Jetsons. It's a popular cartoon show from way back in the 1980s, I believe. Maybe 70s, maybe 60s. No, probably 80s. And it features George Jetson and a variety of other people. Now, George Jetson works for a company called Spacely Space Sprockets. Now, as you look at this particular spreadsheet, I want you to notice at the top that each column has a header, and the headers of the columns say what is under that column. The ones that are here in the blue are the required columns. You have to have these 4 columns in order for it to work. However, you can set this up in one of 2 ways. So I'm going to show you option A, and then I'll show you option B. Option A is in blue, and option B is in green. Okay, so here we are in the first option. I've included the employee's name. You do need a field for the name of the employee. I've included the employee's email. If you use option A, you do need a field for the employee's email. This is because obviously you need to contact the employee, and even if you use option B, you still need the employee's email so the system can contact the employee via email. But in option A, the employee's email is being tied directly to the manager's email over here in column D. So you will also need the profile or the job profile, the designation of the particular employee. Here you can see that Cosmos Spacely is the boss. He's the CEO. And so he reports to no one. So because he reports to no one, I can put anything I want here in this field. And generally it's the name of the company. So I've put Spacely Space Sprockets. Now, in the case of the manager's ID or email, in option A, this is the manager's email, okay? If your company uses IDs instead of emails, you'll want to use option B instead of option A. And here you can see in option B, the employee ID is required rather than the employee email. In option B, you can see under the manager's ID email that the employee's boss's ID is what's used. So in case you haven't quite got that, just let me show you what that looks like one more time so you get the idea. Cosmo is the boss, and specifically he's Rudy's boss. So because Cosmo is Rudy's boss, when we look at Rudy's manager, that's Cosmo's email. And when we look at George's email, that George's boss, that's Rudy, and Rudy is here is the email under George's manager's email. So you can see that what's really going on here with the manager's ID/email is that this is telling the system who is the boss of this person. And that's all there is to it. You can have as many fields as you want, and they can contain anything that you want. Location is pretty typical. You may have some certification information or other information that you put in there for each employee. That's fine too. But you can also have anything. So here I've put pet names. You could put hobbies or skills or any other column that you want can be included. And as I mentioned, these are typically something you just drop right out of your HR information system. Now, once that's dropped out of your HR information system, in most cases, you wouldn't even have to worry about it. You would simply import the data. To do that, you click on the import button from CSV, and then you're going to import that particular piece of content. I think that mine is on my desktop, so I'll just go here to the desktop, and I'll look for my little CSV file. Should look like a little Excel sheet. There it is, basically HRIS data, and then I say open. Now, note that this is a CSV file. If you use an Excel spreadsheet to set it up, make sure you save it as a CSV file. Then you click open, and you'll get a dialog like this. Now, Captivate Prime then asks you these basic questions. Remember, I said these 4 fields are required. You simply click on name here to choose the employee's name column. Now, this could be named whatever you named it, but this is going to choose the column. So in my case, in my spreadsheet, I called this employee's name, and that's the one I'm choosing. Here you can see I'm going to do the email. Now, this email is the email of the employee, so I'm saying, hey, I want the employee's email. And then profile here. So this is the job profile or designation. And notice these headers again are coming straight from the CSV file I uploaded. And then finally the manager's ID. I simply choose the manager's ID or email, and then I click save to go ahead and put that into the system. So it's just that simple to set up the basics in order to be able to have that content uploaded, and then you have all of that content available. Now, next, we promised you that we would show how to create courses. So I'm going to switch over to the Author tab, and there I'll show you what creating modules looks like. I clicked on Create Modules. A module is an element inside a course. I can add a module name. We'll call this particular module Selling Strategies. And then I can add an optional short description and a duration of the module, and I can also then upload that particular piece of content. So I've got my content modules here. I'm going to go here into the content, and I think I've got a a module in here that contains, yeah, see, I've got a nice little PowerPoint module there. I'm going to go ahead and upload that. I could likewise upload PDF or video. I could upload a Captivate file. I could publish directly from Captivate. I could upload any SCORM or AICC zip file and so on. And then last, you want to add some tags. So give it some tags that let folks know what kind of a module this happens to be. So things that might be contained inside the module. Once you're done with that, you click on Save, and that saves the module and uploads it directly into the system. The module is then processed. Don't worry, you don't have to wait for that. You can go on and keep working even while the module is being processed. You can also edit any of these modules simply by clicking on the name, go back to that module, and even overwrite them. Add something over the top, go back in at any point, make changes, upload a new version, and so on. Now, after you've got a module, you're going to want to go back and create a course. Typically, a course would have more than one module inside it. So I'm going to call my course Selling Strategies. I would give my course, typically I would give it a short description, give it an overview, but you can see they're not required. I also have the ability to add a test out, which is a test that will automatically exempt them if they happen to pass it. Great for compliance where you have to repeat the same content over and over. There's also a pre-work section where I can place any content. This is great for longer courses where you have lots and lots of content to work with. And then finally, I can add modules. Now notice, the self-paced module is what we think of when we think of a learning management system. These are the e-learning modules, the PowerPoints, the PDFs, the Word documents, the videos. All of those things are self-paced modules. But you can also link to a virtual classroom. And the virtual classroom can be Adobe Connect, or it could be any virtual conferencing solution, whether it's Microsoft WebEx or any of those solutions. You can link to it from right inside your Fluidic player. You can also link to face-to-face classroom scheduling. So if you want to have face-to-face classroom experience as a part of the course, you don't have to keep it all separated and in different books. It can all be accounted for in the same location. And then finally, it links to an activity module. Now, Captivate Prime is actually under the hood both a learning management system and an LRS. So an LRS is an XAPI or a tin can convention. The XAPI convention calls for activities that can be measured as sort of informal learning. And so the activity module is Captivate Prime's first nod toward the LRS solution. There'll be more in the years to come, but for now, it's a good way to include activities that are not directly inside of Prime. So maybe you have a partner, maybe you have some external source for course materials and so on. All of these things can be handled with the activity module. In addition to that, you can also go to the self-paced module and load in the course content. You can search this field and be able to strip it down and quickly find what it is you want. In my case, I simply want the Selling Strategies PowerPoint. I'm going to click Add and then click Done. It'll automatically add that to my course, and I'll be ready to move on to the next phase. You can see here, this is the overview section of my Selling Strategies course. There's also a settings page. When I click Save, it'll automatically advance me to the settings page, and there I can do things like add additional prerequisite courses. I can also choose a skill. Now, I'm going to want to assign a skill to every course. In this case, I want this skill to be around effective communication, and I can assign a level for that skill. So skills can come at beginner, intermediate, and advanced levels. This one is a beginner level skill, and it's worth 3 credits, according to me. You can also set the enrollment type. You don't have to say that everybody can automatically self-enroll in courses. You can say that it requires a manager nomination or a manager approval. So in this case, I want it to be a self-enrollable course. You can add additional tags, and you can even say which profiles of users should be the ones who are actually taking this particular course. So I'm going to say that the Evangelist should take this course, and I can add as many of those profiles as I want. Now, one of the cool things with courses in Prime is that you can actually upload and associate files of any format. So even if you have files of formats like Excel or whatever they happen to be, you can actually put them in the course content so that people will be able to download them and use them in association with the course. It gives you a lot of freedom to be able to work with the content. Click Save when you're done and notice how simple everything is always in that same location. Now, once I've saved my course, I'm now ready to publish it. I click the Publish button and the course will be published. It'll now appear as one of these mini cards. Now, smart cards show you information about the course. They also show you what you can do with the course depending on what role you're logged in as. So you can see I'm in the author role right now, but if I wanted to enroll people into this course, I would switch to the administrator role, go to the courses, identify the Selling Strategies course, and click on Enroll Learners. And there I can use the Smart Enroller to actually set up all the learners that I want. Now, the Smart Enroller automatically detects groups based on the HR information system and a few other entry parameters. So it's automatically generated a bunch of different groups. I could, for example, say, hey, I want everybody on my team to take this particular course. Or I could come in and say, you know what, I want everybody in the system to take the course. Once I've done that, I've added a group of people. Notice that Prime automatically puts them by individual name in the section underneath. And so if I wanted to say for some reason that Shane doesn't have to take the course, I can simply hit the X and opt that individual out of the course. Once I'm done, I click Save, and automatically all those learners are notified of their new enrollment and the information is sent to them. So it's very simple to use the Smart Enroller to enroll people. Now, in addition to that, you'll also find that under the course information, there are the quiz scores and the L1 and L3 feedback that come for each of those individual learners. Okay. I want to check back in the room and see how we're doing on questions. It looks like we just have a couple of questions. Excellent question, Diana. And I assume your question has to do with you may have a body of learners who seem to fall out of the norm. In other words, they may be seasonal hires or folks like that. I would encourage you to send us an email and let us know, have a conversation about that. As I mentioned, there are discounts for different levels of enrollment. And so it's probably worth having a conversation to get a sense about how all of those things work. Um, yes, and I can expand a little bit on the activity module, and I'll talk to you about that in just a few. Okay, so we've seen the basic kind of enrollment, etc. Let's also then we've assigned some learners. Let's take a look at gamification and badges as well as learning plans. So I'm going to go in my administrator panel back to the main page, and here I can find the gamification configuration set. So I go to gamification, and here I have the ability to choose the confidentiality settings, or I can choose to enable or disable or even reset the gamification statistics. Now here you can see that my confidential users, there are actually no confidential users in my system today. But maybe I want to make somebody confidential. So I'll come over here and I'll just grab a hold of Jesse's record and I'll say, hey, I'm going to make Jesse so that he doesn't have gamification. Don't worry, Jesse, I'll put it back. So I click on hide and it automatically changes it so that Jesse has now confidential settings rather than shared gamification settings. And here under the confidential users, I'll see that when I look here that Jesse is listed. Now I can go back and change that simply by saying let's add Jesse back in, and now Jesse is back in and his gamification is enabled. Now here you can see that the gamification has a number of different solutions. This one for Fast Learner is for completing a specific number of courses in a given month. And there's another one also for Fast Learner for signing up for courses outside of those that you were required to in a given month. I can change that if I want. Let's say that I wanted to edit that and say, you know what, I'd like to change this so that it's based on quarterly participation rather than monthly. That's all I have to do, or I can go in and actually say how many courses I want them to have to take in order to earn a given number of gamification points. So it gives me quite a bit of control over how much optimization can be done in the overall point awarding. Okay. Now, in addition to that, there are a number of these parameters. They include things like the self-driven for upskilling, and they also include these referential pieces, which are kind of nice. So you can award points for just referring to content after the fact. And it reminds me to let you know that Prime also includes the ability to revisit course content. So at any point after you've finished content, you can go back and look at it again. Not only that, but you can award revisitation with gamification points. You can also award a given number of learners for early completion or for timely completion. This is a powerful way to sort of say, you know what, we've rolled out a new solution. The first X learners are going to get extra gamification points for their participation. And you, of course, can control how many people those are simply by opening up the Edit tab and typing in the number of people that you want to be counted for that. All right, so that's a little bit about gamification. I also wanted to cover a little bit about learning plans in a little bit more detail. So here you can see I've got one learning plan already set up, and this is for onboarding. Let's set up one for when someone is promoted to a managerial role. So I'll click on Add, and then here I'll say promoted to manager. So I'm going to create a promoted to manager learning plan. So the event is when the user gets added to a new group. Now, we haven't talked about groups too much in Prime, but Prime creates groups automatically based on any field in that database that you uploaded. In addition to that, you can create your own custom groups. Now, any group that exists in the system can be a group that triggers this kind of learning plan addition. So I want to add a group here. I'm going to add a group which is the managers. So I'm going to go here to the manager group and say anytime that somebody is added to the manager group, I want to then assign some piece of learning. I want to assign some learning about Prime. So you can see here when I type the P, all of the courses in Prime came up. I could say that managers have to take Managing in Prime. Or I could say all about Prime as a learning program is required. Since they're being promoted to manager, I'm going to choose Managing in Prime as my option. So there's my option for Managing in Prime. And I also notably could say, you know what, I just finished this course in Managing in Prime. I'm going to assign that to all of my managers rather than just the ones who are just coming in. So this will assign it once to everybody who's a manager, but it'll also assign it immediately to anybody who gets promoted to becoming a manager. The reminder settings inside of Prime are the same for all of your events, whether they're courses or anything else. You can add new reminders simply by clicking on the little Add New Reminder button, and then you'll get a little option to say whether you want that reminder to be before, on, or after the deadline. You can say how much before, on, or after the deadline you want to give the reminder, and you can even say if you want to escalate that manager. So in this case, the manager's manager will get reminded if they miss their deadline. Click the checkbox, and now you can see I have 2 reminders for this particular task. I click Save, and I've automatically added this particular piece. So now I've added a promoted to manager learning plan. And it's just that simple, very, very simple to be able to do these pieces. I also wanted to briefly show you certifications, but I'm going to do it super briefly because I want to show you some reporting as well. So here you can see an example of a certification. Notice that the enroll learners function, very similar. I can add a new one simply by clicking Add. I give it a name, descriptions. I can choose whether I want it to be internal or external. I can choose whether it's recurring certificate or one that lasts forever. If it's recurring, I can even say what interval do they recur at. There's a special kind of a reminder that comes with certificates because obviously each time they're due, they have a re-up kind of a reminder. You can also award badges with certificates. You can also award badges with the completion of skills, the completion of courses, course instances, and course programs. So you can award badges for really a variety of reasons. You see the reminder settings are all there, and when I'm done, I simply save that new certificate. It will then ask me for the courses that I wish to add to the certificate. I'll simply check them off, and then finally it will give me the chance to look at the learners that are associated with it. Last but not least, I want to show you a little bit about the reporting that's available in Prime. Here's an example of some sample reports in Prime. Notice that you can actually scroll through the data. You can zoom in or out on that data. And you can display the data in different formats. You have the ability to roll over the data and even drill through the data in order to see the data that's underneath it, that's actually feeding that particular report. You have the ability to do some pretty powerful things, like see which managers' teams have learned which skills at what proficiency levels. And all of these things help you to be able to very quickly and easily generate reports. Now you can subscribe to reports via email so that they show up in your email box on an interval basis, like once a week, once a day, once a month, once a quarter, and so on. And you can even create dashboards that you can share between yourself and other managers so that you can have a dashboard that helps you and other managers or you and other team members to be able to solve the problems that you're faced with and to be able to address the needs. To create a new report that's custom, simply click the Add button, choose Custom Report, and then give the report a name, and then you simply fill out the X and Y axis. You can, for example, do a certification report, just check what you want to actually measure. Here's an example. You can make the X-axis organized by manager, for example. You can choose a time range or a till the current date kind of an option. And you can also set up various filters, including filters of who the manager of this person is, what their job role is, and in this case, the certification that you're specifically looking for. So you have the ability to filter it and set it up in a number of ways. Now in Prime, there are over 300 possible reports that you can create with custom reports. So with that, I had better jump back into the room. You guys are probably full of questions. Let me jump back into the room. I'll stop sharing. I know there was one question about XAPI and activity modules. So currently the activities that you do and a few other things report back to what's called an LRS, or a Learning Record Store, which is part of the XAPI model. The other part of the XAPI model is this notion of informal learning through reporting content in a three-part element. This person accomplished this thing in this manner. Architecturally, Prime is set up to be ready for that XAPI support. Now you probably recognize that I said SCORM and AICC imports are supported. Next up, in the next round of features, the XAPI content will be importable. And we're also working behind the scenes on support for informal learning objects that people will be able to use in conjunction with external resources. Cool. So I see that I am totally at the hour. I will give a last call for questions and thank everyone very much for joining today. I will encourage you to try Adobe Captivate Prime. It is available for free for 30 days. I also want to encourage you to, I'm looking for my my little piece, so a special email. If you find that you're interested or are considering Adobe Captivate Prime, I would encourage you to reach out to us via our email, captivateprimesales@adobe.com or allenp@adobe.com. So you can use Captivate Prime Sales at adobe.com or allenp@adobe.com, either way. As always, thanks so much for joining us. Don't hesitate to give me a holler if you have any questions or needs. I will stick around in the room for a bit and entertain questions as desired. Thanks, everybody.